down.
Reel down again. Little step.
Oh my God.
One or two at a time.
That's awesome. Bro, that's insane. Hey everyone, Caleb here with the Fish and Fuel podcast, and welcome back to another great show where we're going to be diving into how to catch crappie. Now, I got my good friend here, Bryan Perry. He's also a brand ambassador for Catch the Fever Rods. He's a serious angler, hardcore crappie guy. Bryan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, Bryan, let's start out with the age-old question. Is it crappie or is it crappie?
In the South, it's crappie.
In the South, it's crappie. That's so funny. That's true. I was just at a show down in Mississippi, and one lady stopped me. She was like, "Honey, you're as sweet as can be, but I can't put these rods in my store if you're going to call it crappie." And I was like, "I don't know if I can sell them to you if you say crappie." And we just joked and laughed, but that hangs a lot of people up just right out the gate. Crappie or crappie?
Well, it's, crappie, sockeye. I mean,
Speck down in Florida.
That's right, speck.
Yeah.
So.
Well, guys, regardless what you call it, I'm going to talk to my man Bryan here, and he's going to tell you how to catch them. And no matter what you call it, that's really the main deal is putting more of them in the boat.
That's right.
Bryan, tell everybody, just kind of introduce yourself. What's your favorite body of water to target crappie? And just kind of talk about, where you like to fish for them and your favorite technique.
Bugs Island is, of course, I call it my home lake. It's about 45 minutes for me, to get up there. And
Bugs Island, that's Kerr Lake.
Kerr Lake, Bugs Island.
Yeah.
Everybody in Virginia calls it Bugs, and everybody in Carolinas calls it Kerr. So
that's right.
Anyway, I started about 4 years ago, and I guess I'm a live scope baby, if you want to call it that. I bass fished all my life, and then stopped that for a while, and then the live scope came out, and I got interested in that, and that's how I got started. My technique I like is casting. This time of the year when this water gets a little bit dirtier, use the single pole, to drop down on them.
Right, absolutely. And when you're casting to them, how are you using the live scope when you're doing it? Because you're using now. Are you using live scope on just about all your techniques on how you're targeting them? Right?
I do.
It's live scope right now,
right?
And that is definitely the game.
That's all I do.
Yeah, and talk us a little bit. What is this time of year right now? I mean, we're in February, going through it quick. Going to be in March here soon. What for this time of year is the best method that you've seen to catch them?
Well, it really depends on what body of the water you're on. These clear lakes right now, the casting works real well. The muddier water, some say they can't, some say they can. Like I said a while ago, I just mostly single pole, drop it right down on them, and I really like that technique. The fish right now, it's getting ready to come spawn here in another couple of months, so everything's coming out of deep, kind of heading and getting ready to do the spawn. So right now it's a lot of open water fish, targeting fish anywhere from 2 foot under to 10 foot down.
Right.
Suspended fish.
Yeah. Bryan, tell us, because those are where you're finding the fish and kind of the techniques that you're using to catch them. When you say, there's a lot of casting for them, tell us what that means. So we just stopped. You just put the trolling motor down, and you've got your live scope turned on. How are you casting for those fish?
So basically, I'll scan out to 100 foot,
On your side imaging.
on my live scope.
I mean, on your live scope.
Yeah, so
Scan out.
I'll pan back and forth, and then if I see the fish, I'll ease to them, and probably anywhere from about 50 foot out, I'll start casting to them. Depending on how spooky it is. Sometimes you can get a little closer, but you just kind of see how the fish are reacting that day, and just cast to them and just kind of let it pendulum to them. Try to put it right on the best you can.
Absolutely. Now, when you're casting to them, are you trying to pick out individual big fish, or are you going into a school of fish? What kind are you going? It doesn't matter if you're in a tournament or just recreational fishing.
If it's a school, I'll just throw it right there. Try to target the school. If it's single fish, just throw it to him.
Right. Now, for your single pole, same scenario. We just rolled up, just dropped the trolling motor. How are you catching those fish this time of year with a single pole?
I'm using a little hair jig or a piece of plastic. I got a guy down in South Carolina, Black Sheep Jig, Keith Tate. He ties a lot of my hand ties, and he does real good. And I'm using an ATX, a little wicked shad. It's a little 1 inch, inch and a half bait, and use a weight above it, depending on how deep they are. Sometimes, if they're real shallow, I'll just use like a 1/8, and so basically you just roll up anywhere from a 14 or 16 foot rod, and you just ease it right down on his head.
Really? And you said describe the setup. You said there's a weight above the hook.
So you're running a weight, whether it be a BB or a quarter ounce.
Yeah.
You run it probably anywhere from, it varies how you like it, a foot. You got bobber stoppers where you peg it so it don't slide on you when you set the hook.
So you've got that weight.
You got the weight above it, and then the jig below it.
Right.
And so or sometimes you flip it out there to them, you just kind of let it glide down and come right over them. Or a lot of times you just have to dead stick them. I've held them on for a minute before they bite. So it's a little patience.
So you're just putting it dead in front of them, holding real still, and waiting for them to just set the hook on it. Make up their mind when they're ready to bite.
Right. And I keep it still. You see a lot of people just bouncing it. Well, I believe I've never seen a minute that just sits there and yo-yos up and down. So that's why, or I'll just start easing it up, and a lot of times they'll follow it right on up and hit it.
Right. I'm glad you brought that technique up, because when I was out there with good friend Matthew Williams and Nick Dowda, who are also elite crappie anglers for Catch the Fever.
Yeah, there's some good ones.
Good guys. And when I was fishing with them, we were using live scope. It's funny how you mentioned that. We were actually casting to them and, kind of letting it fall to them, and they would just look at it, and then I'd start to reel. And it seems like when you started bringing it away, that's where they really got the interest.
That's right.
And they told me, and it was against everything I wanted to do, they were like, reel it away faster. And you don't want to reel it from him faster because you feel like you're losing him.
That's right.
It actually creates a strike.
That's right. It triggers them. They're like, it's getting away. I got to go get it. So, and I carry a lot of guys, and they sit there and I said, look, pull it. Well, that don't feel right, and I'll pull it, and then they start catching fish.
That's right. And I think about that. A lot of guys that watch the show, they don't have live scope, whether they're fishing from the bank or they're fishing from their boat, where they know they've got a waypoint here, and they're casting to a brush pile, maybe it's visible. And seeing that on live scope, it made me think about, because I don't have live scope on my boat, it made me think if I was throwing to some brush and slowly retrieving and won't catching anything, to throw it and speed it up.
Right.
Because, like I said, it's against everything you want to do. but those fish tear it up when you try to get it away from them.
And you know, it just some days you just have to burn it. I mean, just reel. And some days they kind of want it a slow reel.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, most of the time I'll stop it. Only time I really stop if I'm dead sticking it. You know,
Mm-hmm. Holding the rod
right.
still in your hand. Well, this time of year, if you had to pick between casting and dead sticking for crappie, what would you choose right now? What do you see working right now? And look, I'm going to be asking hard questions because it varies with the conditions. But what right now seems to be working best for you?
This past weekend we had a tournament,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all casting to them. The water was super clear, you know, and of course, you know, well, most everybody knows, the dirtier the water, the less the spookier the fish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the clearer, you know, they're
That's
whole
right.
spookier. So
That's right.
this time of the year, those fish are getting really starting to get really shallow. So the dead sticking seems to work.
Really
But
good.
like I said, it depends on the water clarity.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, we hit on some really good topics, and we're going to come right back to those. But let's go to the boat ramp. Bryan just got his jersey on, and by the way, Bryan is a phenomenal angler. I'm telling you right now, he has came in the industry, and you fished some really big trails. The Wally Marshall event just recently did really well in that. I mean, Bryan is one of those guys, if you don't know him, you never met him, take it from me. He's one of those guys that if he decides he's going to do it, it's a nightmare for a competitor. I mean, if he got into the rod business, I'd have to quit because anything you've made your mind up to, you have been successful, and I relate to people like that. I look up to people like that, and you're that guy for me who really just decides he's going to get into something and he's very successful. And with those characteristics and doing so well, take some of that knowledge and take us to the boat ramp where you're backing that boat down in the water. This time of year, it's a little bit windy outside today. You probably know the water temperature right now. How are we going to go find where to catch crappie? Because guys watch this podcast, they get on the boat ramp, and it's so easy because it happens to me. We forget everything we just learned. How do I find them deep? Should I look in the back of the creek? Should I look at the mid creek? Should I look at the front? How does a guy break down in the winter, going into spring, what areas to fish? How do you do it?
It varies on each lake. Bugs is 55,000 acres. And that thing it can get tough at times. I go to a new lake, I'm going to look at maps if I can get them. I got sea maps on my phone, so I look at that. I look for the major creek channels. This time of the year, I will be targeting. I'd start at the fronts of your creeks, and I'd work my way back. So a lot of fish right now are sitting in the fronts. So they're heading back, you know, to do their spawn deal.
Right.
So that's where you'd want to look.
That's good information, Bryan, because that's the thing. We got guys that watch this. They want to go crappie fishing. I mean, they want to go fishing, but they're sitting there telling themselves, man, I've been working all week. I've been working the last 2 weeks. I don't really know where the fish are. None of my buddies been fishing. That right there points a guy in the right place to start breaking it down. So these fish, they're out at the mouth of the creeks. Can be, depending on where you live.
That's right.
Because South Carolina may be further along than we are. Florida, they're more along.
Right.
So you have to look at like water temps and stuff. But they start at the mouth of the creek, and as we get into spring, you're saying they'll move to the middle of the creek, then work to the back.
And you know, depending on where you are right now, I mean, there's shallow fish right now. I mean, there's shallow fish on bugs.
Right. That's the thing about fishing. There's never any definites. Sometimes fish are way early when they should be,
right.
and sometimes they're places we didn't expect.
Hey, you know, I got a tournament. We got a tournament coming up next week, and like I just said, I'll start at all this. I'll fish my history stuff, where I've caught them in the past. You know, I may be out there in 70 foot of water in the middle of the lake, and people riding by like, "What's this cat out here doing in the middle?" You know, them fish be out there suspended, 2 foot. You just don't,
2 foot of water
Yeah.
and 70. I mean,
It-
2
it-
feet
it's-
under the surface and 70 foot of water.
It's crazy, live scope. I didn't know that. Till I got live scope, a bass. I didn't realize how many fish are around you at any given time.
Right.
I mean, these catfish. I always thought a catfish, he's on the bottom. Wrong.
You're right.
I mean, there's
They're coming up and
so many big catfish just swimming all around you. Bass. I mean, everything in the lake's up there.
right.
It's
It's
kinda
amazing.
crazy, but yeah, live
Yeah.
scopes really showed us a lot about the.
It's pulled the curtain back for sure.
Oh yeah,
Well, and Bryan, going out there this time of year and starting at the mouth of the creeks, does it change your game of how quickly you move into the creek or move into a different spot based on where you start in the morning versus evening, afternoon? I know when I was fishing all the time, there were spots that I fished that I knew I would end up catching them, but I knew I wasn't going to catch them till later in the evening. So there's morning time areas to start out with, evening when the sun comes up, and then late in the evening. What's your opinion on that?
I like the sun up. I like the sun. I really like sunny days, especially this time of the year. It gets them fish up quicker. Like I said, I'll go in there and I'll start looking, and pretty much you can duplicate. If them fish, I go in a creek and let's say they're 3 to 12 foot.
Mm-hmm.
You pretty much can duplicate that.
Right.
And it's kind of crazy. It's like all the fish get the same email. Hey, we're going to be sitting this deep. I mean, it's crazy. And you can get on a.
Do you send them an email when you're fishing a
I
tournament?
wish I could.
Did they email you back?
Yeah. You see a lot of fish. You see a lot of fish at 16 foot.
Right.
All right. They don't bite. They're followed up, and it's pretty much like that. If I start seeing them at 16 foot and I can't catch them, I'm looking for them higher fish. If that makes sense to you.
That
I
makes
know
sense.
a lot of guys probably think that's crazy, but that's what I see.
And that's what
You
we're
know,
here to talking about, what
yeah.
you see and what you do. Because there's a reason you're sitting in that chair.
Because I won't, if I can't get those fish at 16, 18 foot to commit or bite, I leave them alone. I don't even start looking there. I look for the higher fish because they seem like they're, and some days those fish down there bite when those ones up here won't bite.
Right.
It's crazy, really.
Wow. Let's talk about, you've already told guys kind of where to start, how to look, how to start their day to find these fish. Let's talk about bait profile, Bryan. Bait profile is something that I am a huge believer in. No matter what you're fishing for, any species, I think a lot of guys can get hung up on too many variations of shades of bait that really can make a difference, but sometimes they overlook the profile sizes of the bait. To me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the more critical ones.
A whitefish, they like big baits, bigger baits. These blackfish are so finicky. I mean, they're the hardest fish. I mean, that's pretty much what we fish for over here, blackfish.
And when he says blackfish and whitefish, guys, I'm going to say this real quick, just because, and you correct me if I'm wrong, there was a time where I did not know the difference between a white crappie and a black crappie. A white crappie has lines that are going down that you can see straight up and down, and they're vertical.
That's right.
And then a black crappie has specks
spotted,
all
yeah.
over
That's
it with really no pattern definition. And then you got some whites that are just kind of
And
mixed
then
in
we're
between.
getting a lot of the hybrids.
Right.
These bigger fish are hybrids.
But a white crappie, you said they prefer a bigger bait.
They like that, yeah. They seem to be easier to catch.
Why do you think that is, Bryan?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
But they're easier to target
Yeah.
and bite.
Yeah.
What do you see different with the black crappie?
Especially the bigger ones. I mean, they're just so finicky.
Yeah. So the black crappie are female crappie. Whites are male crappie. They're easier to deal with. The black
Yeah,
crappie.
if you want to look at it like that, yeah.
I'm just kidding. We ain't gonna get you in trouble with your wife.
I use on the blackfish. I use a really small. I mean, some 1/64 jigs, even to a 1/100th, which is, I mean, super small. They it seems like you can get them to hit the smaller baits.
Right.
I'm not a big stickler, and I know me and Whitey Outlaws argued it this time after time. I'm not a big color person.
Sure.
I mean, I think the profile and the presentation, because I've done it. I've taken 8 different rods with 8 different colors and caught fish. A lot of it's what you prefer and what do you call it? Pretty much your mindset, your confidence factor.
Your confidence
Your
factor.
confidence
That's right. And that catches fish. Confidence
I got
does.
I got a bunch of different colors, but I got pretty much about 4 different sizes. I use.
I tell you. Well, Whitey, he's a character. He's a trip.
The Godfather.
The Godfather, the outlaw of crappie fishing. I mean, he is an absolute mess. And he's the one who designed our precision crappie rods and super good guy. Glad to be tied in with him. And talk about, so when you were talking about those small baits that you use, that you said they definitely seem to like to hit. Those small baits, what pound tests are you using with those small baits?
I use 6 to 8 most of the time. The heavier, a lot of boys are using 15 to 20 pound test. Of course, that makes your bait fall a whole lot slower.
Yeah. You can't cast quite as far if you're casting. Or can you cast that far with a crappie jig with 20 pound test?
Not that far.
Yeah.
Most of the time they're dead sticking them.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Dead
when
sticking.
They're doing that.
Yep.
I use mostly the 6 and 8 and some 10. The dirtier water, I use some 10 on my long rods. But
are you using the Slimeline High Viz? Our Slimeline High Viz?
I use the Champions. That's all I use. The Super Stretch.
So the Super Stretch.
That's all I use.
Okay. So that's our Slimeline Super Stretch that we worked with Whitey and Ronnie Capps to develop just for crappie fishing, and that's a cypress green.
That's right.
So that kind of blends in with the water. So that's the size.
And a lot of this color, the Mad Outlaw, he uses high vis all the time. He likes that color. He said it don't really matter. It's just whatever you like or whatever's in your head.
And Mad Outlaw's down in South Carolina, and their water can get muddy too. Do you think that line plays a role or can play a role, like the color of your line and your color of your jig, if somebody watching this is more in a clear water lake?
I think probably in your clear water. Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it goes down to what you're seeing on the water and what your fish do.
That's right.
Yeah. I always say, like this podcast and like what you're saying, this is a bore site. This is intended to get you on the paper, but at the end of the day, those fish, and they're tolerable because somebody's lake might have more pressure than another lake. There might have got a bunch of rain where we haven't. Their water's dirtier. So this gets you in the right area. This is a bore site, and, it's up to you to hit the target.
That's right.
Bryan, let's talk about the 4-pound crappie that you caught.
The most talked about fish in
the most talked about fish in the United States.
Yeah,
guys,
one time.
This fish was a giant. Bryan calls and he says, I just caught a 4-pound crappie. I'm like, oh my gosh. We told the whole team here at Catch Fever, we're shutting this place down. we're going to go see him. And you said, hold tight. You said, I just got a phone call. And tell everybody about that. Walk us through that day and catching that absolute giant.
So, it was during turkey season.
Yeah.
And I turkey hunt. That's the thing about the crappie and the turkey season.
Uh-huh.
You know, your best crappie fishing is right when the turkey season is. So, it's
Decisions.
that's right. So I got up that morning, and it was in April, and I went turkey hunting.
Right.
I ain't hear a bird that morning. First morning, the season, I guess it had been in about maybe 10 days. First morning, I didn't hear a bird. Ironically, I said, all right, well, I'm going to go fishing. So I didn't have anything to do that day. So
that was the first morning, because y'all have a beautiful plantation where y'all hunt at.
first
You
morning,
didn't hear a bird
no,
that
I
morning.
didn't hear a bird that morning.
This is God intervened.
So
God intervened.
anyway,
Go ahead.
I said, well, I'm going to go hook the boat up. And I went to a lake about 30 minutes from the house. And that day, two of my good friends I've got to know live here in Roxborough,
Yeah,
Carl and Jonathan Rimmer.
that's right.
And
Good people.
They go way back in on the term, and it's kind of crazy how all this. My dad bought a boat probably 18 years ago, and he didn't fish. He wanted to start fishing. I always bass fish, and
Yeah.
he would never fish. So he called and he said, "I bought a boat." I said, "You did?" He said, "Yeah." So it's a Ranger walleye, one of those walleye boats, and this thing is full of crappie stuff. And I'm like, man, where the people? He said, well, the guys just got out. When they got out, They left all their stuff in the boat, everything. I mean, it's amazing. I kept the stuff in the barn. So Johnson and Carl were on the lake that morning. So I'm fishing. I had been there probably 45 minutes catching some fish, and I'm going down through there, and it was 30 foot of water, and I thought it was catfish.
Yeah.
Because we're not used to seeing, we're not used to seeing really 3-pound fish, like Mississippi. I've never caught.
This is a 4-pound fish on live scope.
That's right. So I've never caught a 3-pound crappie. I've caught 298, 299s.
And 4-pounders.
I think I
Skipped
I
right
wrote
over
it
it.
down. I was looking the other day. The last 4 years, I think I've caught, I think it was like 67 or 68 fish that was over 2 pounds.
Yeah.
And I've never sent in for a citation. Virginia's 2 pound. Car Lake's 2 pound or 15 inches, I believe. And so I've never caught a 3-pound fish. And I said, man, I don't know. So I threw at it. And when I threw at it, like I said, it was 2 foot and it hit. I mean, I'm like, good Lord, this catfish I know. And it made one lunge, and I'm by myself. So, and it just floats to the top. It just floats up. And I look down there, and I'm like, get the net, get the net. Well, there's nobody on the boat with me. And I'm hollering, get the net.
Because you just saw it, and you're like.
It's just sitting there. So I'm reaching down there and getting the net, and I got her in the net and put her in the boat. And I'm just sitting there looking at this fish. I'm like, good God. So we got my scales, and it was like those little Rapala scales. And it was like 398, 399, 4 pound. So I called the Rimmers. I said, man, y'all got to come up here. They said, what is it? I said, y'all just need to come around here. And they come around there, and I pulled that thing out, and I thought Carl was going to have a heart attack. And he said, my Lord. And so we waited, and it kept going back and forth. I said, I want to get it officially weighed.
Absolutely.
So I run oxygen on my boat, so I put it in there. So I called Nate Quan.
Mm-hmm.
He's up from Lexington. And he put a 458 and a 3-something in Bass Pro in Concord.
Right.
I called Nate. I said, man, I caught this fish. I said, how do I get? He said, well, try this number, this number. So I called Bass Pro in Missouri. And the girl said, you think it's 4 pounds? I said, I believe it's going to be 4 pounds. So I called and talked to her. She said, well, I'll have somebody call you back. So the guy that looks after the aquarium for Bass Pro and Cabela's and Garner and Raleigh, he said, can you get it here alive? I said, yeah, I can get it there alive. So carried it down there, and he comes out there with his gloves on. And, I've been holding this thing. I mean, he's got his gloves on. And so
he's like he's touching a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, so we carry it back there, and he starts getting the water that they're going to hold the fish in. It's the same temperature as the tank.
That's right.
And the lake water, he got it balanced out so he could put the fish in their water. So he got it and put it in there, and he said, we need to weigh it, get some measurements. Because if it stays in there, it makes it 30 days and it goes in, they do you a replica.
That's right.
And so it was right at 19, almost, I forget, 18, it was right at 19 inches. And it was 16 3/4 girth on it. And that's the thing, his fish was so thick. I mean,
We've got video and stuff that we're going to be attaching to this. And if you follow us on TikTok, if you're watching this on YouTube or something, go to TikTok because we put a lot of images in with stuff and to see the girth because that's massive.
So he gets it and he says, well, let's weigh it. So they weigh it with water. They weigh it in water. Kind of like, I guess, the FLW used to do.
That's right.
On their stuff. They weighed them. So he weighs it and
Wow.
And he goes 6 point something. I'm like, 6 pounds? Hey, I said, that's $25,000 fish right there. We catch the fever incentive program.
That's right.
He said, what? I said, yeah, that's $25,000.
And guys, he's talking about with Catch the Fever, if you catch a state record using our products with our rod, which you were using the precision, catching that 4-pound fish?
I was using the 10-foot rod that day.
The 10-foot, yeah. So he was using the 10-foot double cork handle rod, and it is $20,000 if you catch a certified state record using Catch Fever rod. If you catch it on a Catch Fever rod, and then it's an additional $5,000 if you're wearing our apparel, which is killer. So you thought I just got $25,000.
So he says, wait a minute now, we got to minus the water out. So my heart sank in. I'm like, oh. So anyway, it weighed 4.01.
Yeah.
That was the official weight on the fish. And hindsight's 20/20. I was really excited that day, and I've caught a lot of slack over this fish. And it's kind of a shame that there's some of the stuff that went around.
I saw it.
But, I was excited about the fish, like I said, hindsight 20. Next time, if it ever happens again, it's all going to be videoed with a scale and showing everything.
Yep.
So this guy that weighed it, he's a Marine. He's been a marine biologist for 30 years, and so he weighed it, and that's what he said it was. So
yeah. And this is at Bass Pro Shops. I mean, they got the best of the best when it comes to everything.
Getting back to the rimmers, I was using a jig. I saved all the stuff. It's been in our barn for all these years. And when I started crappie fishing, I got all this stuff out. And it's called a bab fly. Well, the Gores down in Georgia, they'd come to our media camp. Mm-hmm. Him and his wife, Mike and Deborah Gore.
Right.
Well, his dad started the company. And that jig literally, they quit producing it 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what I caught it on. And what it made so special, the rimmers were there. It was a jig that was in their boat that I was using. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, it was a pretty neat deal. But I really wanted to, I didn't want to kill the fish.
No.
So that's why I called Bass Pro and said they want it. So now, at least once a week, I get a picture or a video somebody sends me where this fish is.
Yeah.
And it just, I'm glad to see it. My name's not on it. Nobody in that tank.
I love it.
That goes and looks in that tank knows that Bryan caught that, that fish there.
Yep.
So
every time I'm at Bass Pro Shops, I go by the tank and I will stand until somebody walks up and looks in that tank just so I can brag on you. And I'm like, see that crappie right there? See that that's 4 pounds. They're like, son, look at that. Look how big that crappie is. I said, my buddy caught that. Bryan Perry, he caught that.
So the interesting thing, the fish has to stay in a 30-day quarantine. Mm-hmm. Well, it was in there 45 days. He called me. He said, look, the fish has got some red on it. But he had a bunch of, pound bass that was in there.
Right.
And he think they were fighting.
Yeah.
So that's why she got all red. But that fish didn't eat the whole time it was in quarantine. It didn't eat a drop. And I asked him, I said, what? He said, I've had catfish in it and eat for 3 months in quarantine. And I said, how can they possibly? He said, they're not burning.
No.
They're just sitting there. So, which I thought that was kind of
Interesting.
The fish. But yes.
It's in Bass Pro Shops in
Cary,
North Carolina. If you ever want to go by there, this is the man that caught it. And guys, Bryan is very professional angler. He handles himself well. But I'm going to touch on this because I'm not a voice for the fishing industry, but I would like to kind of say something here. Guys, when Bryan caught that fish, it was an amazing moment. I mean, people online were sharing it. It was going everywhere. And there was also a group of people, I don't know them, and it happens all the time. It happens all the time, and it's a shame, that are on there saying, that fish isn't 4 pounds. You need to check your eyes. Somebody give this man glasses. Give this man a scale for Christmas. Guys, let me tell you something. With any fish that somebody is holding, it is very difficult to be able to see the actual size of the fish. You can literally turn a fish in any angle to try to, and it will look half the weight, and then when you hold it like this, it shows the full weight. Crappie especially, being when a grown man holds a crappie out, they all look small. But regardless, at the end of the day, if a man is showing you a fish he caught and he says he weighed it on his scale and it is what it is, don't be that negative person. Just say, that's a good fish, man. Congratulations, because you did catch a lot of heat over it. And I was stewing behind the scenes, and I don't let stuff get to me easy, but what gets to me is when people mess with my friends, they mess with my business, and they mess with people that I care about. And you work so hard, and I know you do, and that was such a special moment. And it's a shame when people do that, but that's also a character building moment, because you can't condition yourself to block out negative people who just have nothing good to say unless you're exposed to it.
Yeah.
And that is why we're slow to pro staff a lot of times, is because they say, oh, this guy, he's catching all these fish, or a guy will call, he say, I'm winning all these tournaments. He just got into it. And I'm like, that's good. That's good. That's part, that's a factor. But now we have to see how you're going to deal with when the stress comes on, when people come out to bash you, when people want to say something hateful about you, how you deal with it. And we're all human. And I've handled it good and I've handled it bad. But seeing people try to take away something like that, it's unnecessary, guys. Don't be that. Be a steward of the outdoors and just congratulate somebody, because it was everything you said it was and more. And the problem with speaking without knowing what you're talking about is it makes the person that said a bunch of stuff on the computer look like an idiot.
Yeah.
So by keeping your mouth shut, not even congratulating you, you have nothing to lose. Or you can speak and just not be a steward of the outdoors and make yourself look stupid. So let's be positive, guys. Let's be
touch
positive.
on, I see a lot of stuff in the dog world, the deer hunting world. We got so many people against us.
Yeah.
Wanting to do away with the dog hunting. So, and it's getting away from fishing, but it's kind of...
This is important. This podcast talks about life lessons and catching fish.
So, people don't like hunting with deer with dogs.
Yeah.
Well, the South, that's always been a tradition,
It has.
Right here in this county. I like to still hunt just as good as the next guy. Well, I understand if a dog... I got dogs. I've had coon dogs, squirrel dogs, The dog can't read. I understand, if the dog gets on somebody else's property. But we got so many people against our guns, our hunting.
You're right, Bryan.
We don't need to fight amongst each other.
You're right.
Because everything, history, you fall within.
You're right.
So if you're fighting against each other,
Yep.
they're just sitting out there. Well, they're going to tear themselves down and do away with it. If you do away with one dog hunting, you're going to have to do away with the rabbit hunting,
Yep.
the squirrel dogs, the coon dogs, or what have you. Just like the deer, the trophy is in the eye of the beholder.
That's right.
A good friend of mine, Ed K. Roberts, he's passed on now. He's hunted all over the world, Africa and everywhere.
Yeah.
And he told me that one day. He said, he said the trophy is in the eye of the beholder.
That's right.
So everybody wants to kill a big deer.
Yep.
But you got a younger generation, they're saying, well, it's got to be a 200-inch deer.
Right.
Well, there ain't 200-inch deer behind every tree.
Right.
Just like that fish I caught. I didn't realize that after I caught it, talking to some guys, guys fishing on professional trail and has been doing this all their life. Some of those guys have never caught a 4-pound fish.
Yeah.
Catching a 4-pound crappie is like killing a 170-inch deer.
Sure. Absolutely.
And
it's just very rare.
It really is. And I probably, like I said, I have never even caught a 3-pounder.
Yeah.
And then I go catch a 4. So
yeah.
It is.
We
need to. The world needs a little bit more kindness. The way it's headed now is.
Yeah.
I
love that you said that because anglers in the outdoors, we are the last front line of defense.
That's right.
For this country. I mean, outdoorsmen, when I walk through the woods, if I'm on game land or anywhere and I see a man who's scouting and he's got a rifle or anything, like, that's your brother in the outdoors. And this country and the way it's going, they are trying to hurt us out, brother. They're trying to separate us and everything. We don't need to fight about what size this fish is and try to tear each other down. Bryan, you're so right. We have to be united.
That's right. That's right.
We have to, because we are the last front line of defense. There's not as many kids that are being raised up in the outdoors, Bryan.
Say where the younger generation is gone. There are not as many, But anyway,
you're right. That's so important, and I encourage anybody on this podcast, if there's something in life that we can take away to benefit, we'll spend an hour if we have to on it, because at the end of the day, fishing is something we enjoy, but we can learn so many life lessons to help us be better outdoorsmen. I see a lot of anglers that have a lot of potential, Bryan, and some want to fish for this brand, some don't have a desire to, or some just want to get noticed, or I see a lot of guys with a lot of potential, and I see the way they act and the way they conduct themselves on social media, and and then I'll look around, who are they fishing with, who are they around, and I just feel bad because I'm like, they don't have an example. They don't have anything to say, hey, man, we're going to be better than this. Look, we're going to have a good time. We're going to have fun in the outdoors. It's a good time. We don't have to be suit and tie professional, but we can be respectful. And I hope this podcast will take somebody and we can be iron that sharpens somebody else, and I love what you said, because it's as a brand, it's not difficult for me to find guys that can catch big fish. It's hard to find guys that can just be an example to other anglers and be fishers of men and not just fishers of fish. And that's a standard we set at Catch Fever, and
that's right.
That'll be something we never change. But so thank you for bringing that up. And Bryan, talking with them that day and catching that 4-pound fish, which was absolutely incredible. And congratulations. I love that it went into the tank, and people can get inspired to go crappie fishing and try to catch one like that as well. Is there any difference, going back to being on the water, is there any difference that you do, like fishing that day when you were just fishing for fun and you caught that 4-pounder, and what you do on tournament day?
I fish pretty much the same, but when I go just fun fish or looking for fish, it seems like I catch a whole lot more fish in the tournament. But anyway, it's I think one thing I do, and I got to get kind of better at it, I put a lot of pressure on myself.
We all do.
You know,
You do, especially. You're a competitor.
I get out there and I'm like, this past weekend we're sitting there fishing, and I had just come down through this one area, and I would turn around and come back, and the boy in the boat caught a 222 in front of me.
A 222.
Yeah, 222, and I'm like, oh, man, and it kind of took the wind out of me a little bit, but because I had just come down through there, I'm like, what did, did I just totally just miss that fish, or did the fish just come up?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what did I do wrong? Because I just come through there.
Yeah.
And but it's in all this stuff. I kind of, if it's your day, it's your day.
Mm-hmm.
If it's your day to kill a 170-inch deer,
Yeah.
it's just your day.
That's right.
I squirrel hunted, I competition coon hunted forever, and had the opportunity to have a dog that won a world hunt in '92, and just hunted. So it comes so close so many times, and then I got into the competition squirrel hunting, and was fortunate enough raised 2 dogs, and took both of them to world champions the same year.
Yeah, that's right.
I was the second person with 2 different dogs in 1 year to ever do it.
Yeah.
Those guys have done it with the same dog when I took 2 different dogs. And I've been close so many times in those hunts.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when it's your time, it's your time.
That's right.
So as a competitor, I keep going and going and going. So I'll get it. I got the record for the most 5th and 6th places in the crappie tournaments, I think. So
you're consistent.
Yeah,
you're consistent.
Yeah, I swear.
No, you do phenomenal, Bryan.
I told Jonathan remember he's fished a couple tournaments for me lately. I said, slow and steady like the turtle. Turtle wins the race. So
that's right.
We moving on up. So
that's
anyway,
right.
I enjoy it. I enjoy competing. And
yep.
So
and I refused. I know luck plays a factor in it, but I also know for fact, and that's the purpose of this podcast, this is intended to give guys information that will take luck. If you don't know what you're doing and you just go crappie fishing and you just throw it out in the water and you pull in a crappie, the luck scale pegs up here. It was the reason why you called it. Now, if you watch these podcasts and listen to these interviews and start applying these things, you start saying, oh, okay, I'm going out tomorrow. I'm going to start looking in these areas that Bryan said. Now, boom, you click the luck down. You don't need as much because now you've got in the right areas. Right. You know what to learn. Then you say, you know what? This time of year, I'm going to try dead sticking for them. Usually I cast for them. I'm going to start dead sticking because these fish look like they're doing what Bryan said they're doing. Boom. Now the luck factor went down some more. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm going to apply this. He was talking about the profile of bait, what seems to be working for him. And now, whether they end up using that same bait or a different variation or something, now they're thinking the right way and they're changing stuff out in their tackle box. And then the luck factor comes down more, where you can learn and stack the luck in your favor. Where somebody's relying on 100% and you're just needing 20. And that is confidence. Right. When you can, I always tell people in my business, I don't pray for God to just give it to me. I don't pray for that. He's gave it to me. He's gave me stuff without me asking. Lord knows he has. I just ask, God, I'm going to put the effort in. You bless the work. And it's the same thing with luck and skill when it comes to fishing. Sure, you need luck to strike. You do. But if you're applying these things, you are becoming better. You're putting in the work. And you'll find out you need a lot less luck the more you learn and improve.
That's right. I have so many people with the live scope. I go out there, I can't see this, I can't do this. All I can say is just time on the water with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the main thing. It's not magic. You still got to make the fish bite. You know, it's just a lot of time.
Right.
And there's a lot of guys that are just super with it. This younger, I'm 57. Eyes aren't like they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But these younger generation, they see so much, it comes to them quicker. I guess they process it quicker because, you know, they're younger, what have you. But it's just another tool.
Yep.
You know, it's another tool like the rest of your depth finders on the boat. A lot of people don't like it. I will say this: if you're going to compete and be competitive, you got to have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really going that way in the bass world. You know,
For sure.
more and more tournaments are won with the live scope now.
You're right. You're right. And getting back to, and I wanted to ask you this when you touched on it, where this time of year, giving these guys watching tips and tricks to check for if they want to go out tomorrow and catch a big crappie. These fish don't know what season it is. They have no idea. They go off water temperature. Water temperature tells them where they need to be doing internally.
But going out there right now, if you want to catch big fish now, February, March is the time to do it.
February and March is the time to catch the big fish where you can just go out there and hammer them. What's the water temp that you see where these fish start moving into the back of the creeks? What do you kind of see?
Right now, it's running anywhere. What I've seen the last couple of weeks is anywhere from 45, and I've seen some 51.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there again, it depends on our winter's so crazy. One week it'll be freezing. I mean, like we had a few weeks ago, and then the next week it's in the 60s.
So
the fish are kind of.
They'll recognize those warmer days and start to move shallow, and then it pushes them.
That's right.
Right back out when we have a cold snap.
I don't. You know, I think once they commit. Now this is just me. Once they commit, I don't think they go. They may move back a little, but it's not like
they don't go 2 miles.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So this is good. This is great information. So we have weather swings coming into spring. Like you said, it's cold one day and then it's warm the next. You're listening to this podcast, you know, okay, when the water temp starts warming, these crappies start moving shallow. I'm going to identify those. You catch them that day, and then boom, we have 2 days of cold weather. And now it moves those fish out. So you're telling guys, look, based off what you've seen, don't feel like you got to go a mile down the lake to try to find those fish. They're still in that area. It's just here might be the back of the creek. Here's the front. If you were catching them right in here and we get a cold snap, they're somewhere in that gap most likely.
Or they just sink or go down there and just sit in the mud.
Right.
You know, bury themselves in the mud. They're not going to go that far.
So crappie will bury themselves in the mud.
Oh, yeah.
How do you spot a crappie that's buried in the mud and target it?
You got to ask Hayden Jeffries because he's the best at that.
Yeah.
I mean,
so they bury themselves in the mud.
You can see them with the scope. You know, it's just like there again. It's a lot of time, kind of perfecting that. I mean, I'm more of an open water guy. I like to fish deeper water.
Right.
You know, and then there's a lot of guys that like really shallow fishing. And you know,
sure.
That's something I need to get better at.
Yeah.
But they know what they're looking at. I mean, you see a little bump down there, and okay, that's him, and he'll drop down there, and he'll rise up, and
grab
catch him. It's just what kind of style. Like when I bass fish, I was more of a junk fisherman. I throw everything. I mean, I had 4 or 5 different baits up there. I didn't stick to one thing. You know.
Yeah.
I'll be running down the lake. I see a big lay down over here, I'll go over there and fish that.
Yeah.
Or I'm going out here and it's a drop, fish something else different there.
Yeah.
That's just how I fished all over the place. And that's kind of how I crappie fish, but it seems, it works out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Bryan, thank you so much. I mean, time flies when we do these podcasts. Yeah. And we will literally sit here for hours. We will, because there's so much. We had not even went into your boat setup, other techniques that you're using for these fish, whether it's long line trolling, if that's something you like, what speeds doing that, and boat position and wind and those types of things. So I'm going to have you back for another podcast because boat position, fishing in the wind, those types of things, I want us to go over, and I want us to talk about that because there's so much we have to cover. It's just this will be a Joe Rogan podcast, and it'll be 4 hours if we do it today. And I'm so thankful that you took time out of your day to come sit with me and being a part of this podcast. So, Bryan, how can people follow you in your fishing adventures?
You're
on social media.
Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter's getting ready to do me an Instagram.
Cool.
Or some TikTok, NC Crappie Man.
And we'll tag you on TikTok. If you're seeing TikTok, just look. If you're watching this clip on TikTok, just click on the link and I tagged you in it.
Yeah, I would like to thank my sponsors.
Please do. Please do.
Catch the Fever foremost. Slime Line, Precision Crappie Rods, ATX Lures, makes a super little plastic bait. Custom Magic Jigs here in North Carolina. Stinger Supply. As far as your Garmin, all your Garmin setups, dog stuff, he's got that. Bobcat's Bait and Tackle on Bugs Island.
I got their hoodie on right now.
Yeah, he's got it there.
I love those guys.
Black Sheep Jig Company down in South Carolina makes a super hand tie. Guthrie Jigs out in Texas makes, I think, is the best jig on the market. Easy Drift Trolling Systems.
Yes.
Is another one. They do a lot with Catch the Fever.
Yeah.
For all your
Brad
setups.
and the guys at Easy Drift, great guys, man.
Yeah.
Great guys and innovative with some of their stuff,
right.
man. I mean, y'all check out Easy Drift, like the bait pins and the different things that they've got for your boat. I mean, they got it going on with some awesome stuff. Love those guys.
Yeah. And we got some things in the works, some new rods and some stuff coming out.
A lot of exciting things.
I've been using a rod. We can't really talk about it a whole lot, but
It's made by a certain rod company.
Yeah.
Catch the Fever.
It's
You've been prototyping with Whitey and Matt and Bobby Whitlow.
Yeah, it's going to be a dedicated live scope rod, so it's really, really nice.
It's going to be bad.
It is, and I just want to thank you and Tony for taking me on and believing in me, and I really appreciate what y'all have done.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, we always believe in you. We've always got you back, and we appreciate you wanting to be affiliated with us because Disney Magic has been the word that's described this brand, and it's not. There's a lot of brands that create products, but what makes this brand special is the people inside it.
That's right.
And nobody's perfect.
That's
right. You know, I hope people don't hear that and they think, oh man, Catch the Fever, they think they're better than somebody or they think they're perfect. We are so not perfect. My goodness. But we're going to have a standard so high that we may not hit it, but we're going to try to hold to that standard.
Yeah, that's right.
And just have good people. And that's you, brother. That's you. And
I appreciate it.
Your success continues on. And you're going to do a lot of big things in crappie fishing. And I'm going to be standing right beside you and telling people I know you. So well, thank you guys so much for listening to another Fish and Fuel podcast. Be tuned in for the next episode that we're going to have Bryan back on, where we're going to go into a lot more techniques on how to get dialed in and target these crappie. So, guys, thanks so much for watching, and make sure you follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. TikTok has been great. That's probably our most viral platform because we incorporate a lot of images and immediate tips and tricks that help you catch more fish on the water. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Fish and Fuel podcast.